I'm going to give you an overview of the linguistic background of Kosovo. I mean, all the communities and all the languages that are spoken in Kosovo and that are recognized as official languages. And then I'll give a short feedback on the rise of new communities which are being regarded as the subgroups of the Roma or Gypsy community. So, to start with, this is the linguistic overview of the Republic of Kosovo. So it has a population of 1.8 million. So the majority are Albanians, around 87%, and also 8% of Kosovo Serb, which is divided between southern and northern Kosovo, because you know the political situation right now. So this is how it's being divided, and the remaining 5% is Turkish, Bosnian, Gorani, Roma, Ashkali, Egyptian, Croat, Montenegrin communities, and these are the communities that I will focus more. So this Roma, Ashkali, and Egyptian, these two communities came up after the independence of Kosovo. And the official languages of the Republic of Kosovo are Albanian and Serbian, so on the central level. So Albanian community is Albanian is one of the two official languages along with Serbian. All the generation of Albanians educated under the Yugoslav educational system, they do speak Serbian as well. Some speak Turkish because we have this influence from the Ottoman Empire, and especially at the municipality or in the city of Prizren, we do have many Turkish inhabitants. So this also influenced the social interaction between Turkish and the rest inhabitants. Influenced that some people do speak. I mean, the large number of Prizren citizens do speak Turkish. Serbian community. So Serbian language is one of the official languages in Kosovo alongside with Albanian, and they use Latin and Cyrillic alphabet as well. So Serbian language schools in Kosovo do not teach Albanian language, and vice versa. So also the Albanian schools do not teach Serbian language as an elective language. However, I will give you then an example of the Bosnian community who do teach Albanian as an elective subject. And a minority of Serbs in Kosovo speak Albanian. So those that had a good connections with Albanians and good relations, they do speak Albanian. But there's also, I must say that the younger generation from both Albanian and Serbian community, they hesitate to learn each other's language. Maybe because it's like the first steps that we gain the state with them, that the situation is still, how can I say? Tense. So maybe through the time it will change. Bosnian community, they speak Serbian fluently and also speak Albanian. That depends on the place where they live. If they live in an urban area, they do speak Albanian, whereas in rural areas which are inhabited mainly by Bosnians, they do not speak Albanian in general. The Kosovo education public system offers education in Bosnian languages in several municipalities and in all levels, starting from primary school, high school, and then faculty. And then in high schools they teach Albanian as an elective subject. So the Bosnian language is recognized as an official language in the municipalities of Dragaš. This is highly populated by Bosniaks, Peć, and in Prizren, and as a language in official use in the municipality of Isto. So language in the official use is the language that you can refer to the municipality, and they can reply to you in the language that you speak, but it does not enjoy the status of official language in municipal level. Turkish community, so they speak, in Kosovo they have their own dialect, so they speak their own variety of Turkish, but in standard, in educational system or everywhere else, they use the standardized Turkish language, which is spoken in Turkey. Some non-Turkish communities, such as Albanian, Roma, and Bosniaks, as I said before, they do speak Turkish language, particularly in the Prizren region, as I said, because the influence was high. And it's also during the summer period, lots of Turkish tourists come to Prizren to visit all those remainings from the Ottoman Empire. the interest of the local community also to learn the language in order to welcome them and guide them is raising. Turkish is recognized as an official language in the municipality of Rize, Mamusha, which is like the biggest municipality inhabited by Turkish, and has the status of a language and official use in the municipalities of Giran or Knilane, Pristina, and Vučitrn, and Mitrovica, Mitrovic. In Kosovo, whenever we refer to municipalities, if the municipality differs, if the name differs in Serbian, then we tend to pronounce and write two versions, the Albanian and the Serbian version. Whenever Kosovo issues some public documents. So this is the problematic issue that I discussed more in my paper. I'll give you a short background of the Romani community, and then I'll speak about the division which arose after the independence, or even after 1999, after the last Kosovo War, and it has been seen as a consequence of the socio-linguistic influence which influenced within this community, and this is how these two communities appeared after 1999. So most Roma speak Romani as their native tongue, but they do have lots of loan words depending on the area that they live. For example, in Prizren they do have lots of loan words of Turkish and Serbian. And if they live in Gračanica, which is highly inhabited by Serbian community, they do have loan words from Serbian. And if they live in some Albanian area, they do have loan words in Albanian. However, the Roma community in Kosovo, they clearly understand one another. Kosovo's public education the system offers no education in the Romani language. This has 2 points, because there is no one standardized language known as Romani, because linguists are still working on it. And secondly, there is no highly educated personnel who would actually make this happen. But what is important is that in Prizren municipality last 2 years, there is a pilot project which is being implemented in 3 primary schools, and children are offered Romani language as an elective language, Romani language and history as an elective subject within the educational system. So it's still being implemented, and they're now looking whether it was successful or not. So depending where they live, Roma speak either Serbian or Albanian as a second language, and this is also known within the Romani community. So depending where they live, if they do speak the language, if they also integrate totally into the society with which they interact, forgetting everything what belongs to Roma tend to distinguish them as Serbian Romanis. And if Roma people live with Albanians and tend to forget everything what is related to Roma, starting with the language, customs, and everything, and if they completely integrate with the Albanian language, Roma tend to distinguish them as the Albanian Romanis. So recently in the municipality of Gračanica, or Gračanic, the Romani language has been awarded the status of the official language because of the growing number of the Romani population in this municipality. So it's more than 5%. That's the legal criteria to fulfill in order your language to be awarded the status of the official language. So in Gračanica, Romani is official, but with semi-standardized Romani, which is spoken in Kosovo, because depending on the area, we have the standardized Romani that we use. Currently, no standardized version of the Kosovo Romani dialect has been officially agreed on, contributing to the lack of official recognition for the Romani language. So this is the only consequence that results that the Romani cannot go on. After this standardized version is proposed, then maybe many things will set down. So this is the rise of these two new communities. Ashkali consider themselves as an ethnic group whose ancestry can be traced back to ancient Persia. The Ashkali community shares cultural similarities and socio-economic issues with the Roma and Egyptian community in Kosovo, but considers itself a distinct and separate community. This is this problematic issue that although they're perceived by others and although they share very common things, they still tend to distinguish themselves. One important aspect to be highlighted is that the Romani community, wherever they live, they tend to look for security and to feel more protected in the society where they live. So this is why these two communities have arisen after have come up after the independence of Kosovo, because Kosovo then was led by Albanians. So these two communities are more pro-Albanian and did not exist before its independence, because it was ruled by Serbia. So this tendency to look for security resulted the rise of these two communities, according to many scholars. This is why these two communities have come up. Ashkali are native Albanian speakers. Ashkali, particularly older generations educated under the Yugoslav system, occasionally speak Serbian, which was very common during that period, that all the generation could speak Serbian, because it was also taught as an elective subject at schools. The Egyptians consider themselves as an ethnic group whose ancestry can be traced back to ancient Egypt. So they started to be mentioned since 1991, and this was the politics which was introduced by Milosevic, because as he saw that the Albanian communities growing more, he found this historical gap that some Egyptians were mentioned, and then he came up with the conclusion that those Albanians that we are having day by day in bigger numbers are actually Egyptians. And then he saw that many Roma people who live among Albanians tend to declare themselves as Albanians. So finding this historical gap and seeing this reality that is being done, he has given this name to these Romani people, which are considered Romani, however they can declare themselves as whatever they want. So, and these two things were combined, and then after being seen by the today Egyptian community, they said, let's use it then. And we are now Egyptians. So they share cultural similarities and socioeconomic issues with the Roma and Ashkali communities, and this is how this is referred in Kosovo legal system. So this was taken by the Kosovo legislative documents. So they also recognize that they share similarities, but they still tend to draw these distinctions between them. Egyptians are also native Albanian speakers, and the older generations speak Serbian. My main findings in here, I tried to give my answers to these questions. What is the difference between Ashkali and Egyptians? The difference is none. And what the tendency today is that very recently, the Egyptians had a conference, and they declared brotherhood with Ashkali, because they seen that there is nothing that divides them. And Ashkali now tend to consolidate with them, and very soon they will come up with one name. So there won't be Ashkali and Egyptian. We are expecting this. And according to many interviews that I saw from political representatives and also scholars who are coming from these two communities. Are they different from each other in terms of language? No, because they speak Albanian. And that's why the Romani community refer to them as Albanized Roma. Are they culturally different? Actually, no, because they share this cultural affinity with the Albanian language, with the Albanian community, but also culturally they are similar to Roma from Kosovo, I'm referring. Because also Kosovarian Roma have adopted their culture to the Kosovarian culture, so they still share all the similarities with the Kosovarian citizens. And there is no clear distinction when referring to these three communities in particular, because if you go to a ceremony which is done by Ashkali, Egyptian, or Roma, you might not find clear distinctions. Do they live in different places? No, because as in Kosovo as well, you can find many Roma, Ashkali, and Egyptian people living in suburbs of the society as everywhere. And even these Ashkali and Egyptians, they also live near the rubbish. So this also gives us the idea that they are actually one community, and they share these. And they also, if you refer to the jobs that they do all the same jobs as tool making, cleaning, and other blacksmith, and other things that they share. Actually, these groups differ in any way linguistically? No, or otherwise? No, because Roma they are the people who kept their language, but they also speak the language of the society. Whereas these Ashkali and Egyptians, according to many scholars, they forgot the Romani and they were Albanized Roma. But however, the Egyptian and Ashkali scholars tend to say that they had nothing to do with Roma, that they were only given the name by the society as Roma, because they were sharing these common senses.
So does that mean they don't speak the Roma?
No. But in some older generations from Ashkali and Egyptians, they do speak. I mean, they know words, as with Serbian.
Would you refer to both of these groups? I mean, would Roma refer to both of these groups as
Albanized Roma? Yes. This is how.
Which you mentioned before.
Yeah. What does each group within the greater Romani community think of the other two? I just responded to that. So they tell them as Albanized Roma. Also, the Romani community from Kosovo tend to refer to the Roma who live in Serbian area, or Roma from Serbia who are totally integrated into Serbian society, even having their appellation or the name, their personal names Serbian. They tend to tell them as Serbian Romani. So this is how Roma see the other Roma who are who actually forgot their traces and tend to go through beside these two stronger sides in order to gain more security. So this is basically it. It's 18 minutes, and this was the bibliography that I used. Thank you, and if there are any questions, I'm very happy to answer.
So you mentioned that the Roma community sometimes live on the edge of the society.
They don't?
They live on the edge of the society in Kosovo. So the problem might be that I know it's common in Croatia that a lot of those people don't have their personal ID cards, so you can't really know what's the number of those people. So I wanted to ask if the same problem is also in Kosovo.
Yes, depending on the area that they live. If the area that they live have welcomed them well and has integrated them well, for example, in Prizren you can rarely find such cases. But what we have in Kosovo is the Roma and Ashkali Documentation Center that they mainly work in Fushkosova and in Ferizaj. These are two municipalities that the Romani, Ashkali, and Egyptian are less integrated, and they face such basic problems. So depending on the area,
depends how the rest of the community
accepted them through the time. So depending where, you might find these basic elements, and then if you go to another municipality, you might see something totally different.
I found it quite interesting. I think it's important that when I asked you to talk about language, I think that was important just because I had no idea that, for example, Turkish was, before I saw your CV, I never knew, didn't know that people spoke Turkish there, but that's just because, within the form of the song. Two points. One is more important than the other one. This is just
a second, you can stop it.